Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to my library tour for 2022, where I am going through all the books that I have in my collection and also occasionally diverting to all the books that I used to have in my collection and don't anymore. Because I found on an old MacBook that once I put power in it, worked just fine. Just fired up again. I hadn't touched it in 15 years. I found a gigantic trove of scanned book covers, and that's reminding me of all these things that I once had and don't anymore. So I thought we'd go through some more of the Library of the Lost today, and then next week I will figure out how I want to continue the library tour in person. So we're going to do a few more books that I don't have anymore and see if they interest you and how much I remember about them. The first one is by Lee Bantle. And it's a gay coming-of-age novel. I think there are quite a few of those in this particular episode of the Library of the Lost. This is David Inside Out. And it's about a high school track star who develops a crush on one of his teammates and feels like that is absolutely not anything that he can say and isn't anything he should even think. So he throws himself into denying it, absolutely throws himself into pretending that it's not true, even to the point of, if I remember correctly, having a little physical gesture where a rubber band or something that he will snap every time he starts to think anything about his teammate. And it turns out that the teammate feels the same way or thinks that he might, and a novel ensues from there that I remember being quite light but quite charming. Oh, great. Then we have Lawrence Babbitt's. This is a definitive work of military history. This is Devil of a Whipping, the Battle of Cowpens. This is a battle in 1781 in the American Revolution in South Carolina. That is a textbook case for military historians. Cowpens is still taught at West Point, I think, and a lot of other military academies, Sandhurst and elsewhere, because it's an example of a military development called a double envelopment that is rare to see it such a textbook example done here. I have studied this battle in great detail, not only because I have a tendency to hate the British general Ben Astor Tarleton, but also because I just think it's absolutely fascinating. The elements involved, the topography. I've walked the topography. And this is the definitive military history, the definitive readable military history of the Battle of Cowpens. How delightful that I once had it. This is a rare, actual paper-bound history book that I would have, that I would keep if I find it again, and I know that I will. This thing I have, but I don't have it in this format, I don't think. This is the old mass-market paperback of Francis Donaldson's Life of Edward VIII. With the old Ballantine cover there. This was probably from the early 1980s, maybe even earlier than that. And it's a big and very good, very gossipy, very, very full-fledged and colorful life of the Duke of Windsor and his evil wife, Wallis Warfield Simpson. I have many, many Edward VII biographies, ranging from his own execrable ghost-written book to Philip Ziegler and a whole bunch of other people. I find him fascinating. I find the figure fascinating, and of course the abdication crisis fascinating. But I don't have this mass market. I would like this mass market if I could find it. Oh, wow. Okay, this is another one that I wish that I had, especially since when I read this and enjoyed it so much, there was no BookTube, I didn't know that BookTube existed, and I now know a lot of people on BookTube who would love this book. Because it's the history of magic. It's the history of witchcraft. Not operating under the New Age crunchy granola idea that witchcraft and magic actually exist, but rather a study of them in history. The fact that they don't exist doesn't mean that they haven't been absolutely pivotal in history, for huge chunks of history. And this is a terrific book. Boy, I would love to find this again. This is Norman Cohn's book, Europe's Inner Demons, in which he takes a look at witchcraft. And specifically the witchcraft trial craze, the anti-witchcraft mania that gripped Christian Europe for a few centuries. This author has a whole bunch of interesting things to say. He studied enormously in the documentation and claims that a lot of the documentation is forged, isn't real at all, that a lot of the atrocities, a lot of the history of these things was used by the church for its own ends. Just a terrific off-the-beaten-path work of European history. Okay, then we have another gay coming-of-age novel. This is by D. Travers Scott. This is Execution, Texas, 1987. About a boy coming of age and coming to grips with a whole bunch of things, from his ambivalent feelings towards his girlfriend to his even more ambivalent feelings towards a fairly pushy school athlete, a boy who is his own age and who kind of wants things from him that he's not sure he wants to reciprocate. And there's also an incredibly evocative, let's just say, portrait of the boy's mother in the course of this book. I talked to D. Travers Scott a long time ago at a Glad Day bookstore in Boston, a little walk up the stairs gay bookstore in Boston that doesn't exist anymore. And I asked him about this novel. I said, please tell me that you were exaggerating. Please tell me that if the character of the mother was drawn from your own mother, that you were exaggerating. He said that if anything, he was toning things down. But I haven't seen a copy of Execution, Texas in a long time. Then we have Richard Rhodes. You might know him for the making of the atomic bomb. This is a very different kind of book. You've got a Grant Wood cover there. This is Farm, where he goes to, is it Minnesota? Or I think it might be Minnesota, where he spends time on a farm, taking lots and lots of notes on a working farm in, I think, Minnesota. And just writes a book about what that is like, about what farming is like in the relatively modern era in America. Just fascinating. And of course, it resonated with me quite a bit. I know quite a bit about contemporary American farming and not so contemporary American farming in Iowa. I know quite a bit about that. So this resonated. I wish I had a copy of this. I would love to reread it. Okay, then we have from the old Plume imprint, this is yet another gay coming-of-age story. This one's a little bit older. This is a vintage thing, but Plume reprinted it. And you can see, the 1980s look of this thing all over it, because this was what their cover design was like, these sad gay covers that were photographs. This is Finisterre by Fritz Peters, with a glowing introduction by Gore Vidal. Gore Vidal very much liked his power to make a literary reputation or to remake one. He very much liked championing the rediscovery of works or authors. He famously did that for Don Powell. And he tried his hardest to do that for this book as well, which is about a young man who goes overseas and loses his heart and a few other things. And it's, I think, a little bit overdone. But I used to have all of these Plume paperbacks. Boy, oh boy. They seemed like water in the desert for a long time. They came out with great stuff. Not just well-designed, but they had a really good editorial team, a team that was picking things. This was a perfect example of that, where their editorial team picked this novel, which is much older. This is from, I think, the 1950s, and decided to give it a reprint. Okay, all right, then this next book, I would definitely grab it if I saw it again. We've seen other examples in this series. A long time ago, a publisher did little hardcovers in the Centers for Civilization series. So you had Boston in the Age of John F. Kennedy. You had Thebes in the Age of Akhenaten, I think. But this one, I would love to have. This is Florence in the Age of Dante. And what it does is, it isn't just the period that's in the title, ever. The books range backwards in time from their target, but they mostly stick with their target as a discussion not only of the culture and the people, but also the architecture. I've read this book. I had it, obviously. I scanned its cover, but I read this book a long time ago, and I've never read an entry in this series that I didn't love. I wish that it were back. I wish that whoever has the rights to these would reprint them, because the whole series is very, very intentional, as you can tell from the titles, not looking at the latest scholarship. And they're usually wonderful works on their own, wonderful historical examinations on their own. The whole series should be reprinted. Okay, well, another thing that should be reprinted here. This is The Fountain Overflows by Rebecca West. This was a crappy old mass market paperback. Even when I scanned it, it was falling apart. I'm sure that it fell apart right after. And as far as I know, I'm getting a lot of good updates from a lot of you about whether or not some of these things are currently in print. As far as I know, this is not in print. It certainly isn't a beautiful Penguin paperback or something like that, as it should be. Penguin does Rebecca West's classic Black Lamb and Gray Falcon, which is a huge work of nonfiction. But her fiction was really good, too. Really, really good. And this is fantastic. It's about, it's very autobiographical, I suspect. It's about an odd, eccentric family of geniuses, including, as you can tell from that cover, quite a few musical geniuses. There are passages here describing virtuoso piano performances that are as good as anything I've ever read. And it's also a portrait of a family that doesn't quite know how to live in the modern era, which would have been the beginning of the 20th century. Very well done. A very touching novel. I obviously am not pining for that old paperback because I wouldn't get it if I saw it because it isn't sturdy enough. But I might very much like a hardcover or an ebook if there is such a thing. And then we have Michael Howard's book, The Franco-Prussian War. I had this in I think that's a Routledge paperback a long, long time ago. This is the definitive, I think still unchallenged, military analysis of the Franco-Prussian War, but it has lots going on other than that. Very good character portraits, very good analysis of the social factors involved. And it's the reason that I say, more or less definitive is because whenever I read anything that touches on this subject, this book is prominent in the bibliography. No author does without it. And that tells you a tale. I don't know. I think this was a crappy trade paperback as well. So I don't know that I would want this format, but I think I would want the book. And then we'll finish up with a romance. This is His Dark and Dangerous Ways by Edith Layton. Terrific cover there. I don't know why they're so sedate. I don't know why she's so sedate. At least she has her attention focused on the right thing. But this is a story about the main character. The male main character is an ex-soldier who's still fighting for his country, even though he's sustained physical and mental wounds. And his mission, he is consumed with his duty, with his mission, and thinks that that the main character, the female main character, might be able to help with that mission. It's only comparatively late in the book that he starts to wonder if maybe more of his emotions are involved than that. I don't think I still have a copy of this book. Where I would get rid of a mass market paperback, I certainly wouldn't get rid of that to the Brattle or any other thrift shop. Where I would get rid of it, I don't know, but I don't think I still have a copy of this. I haven't actually checked, but I'd love to find one. Good luck. I know a couple of bookstores that I could look for stuff like this. They're not the Brattle, and to get to them, I would need a car, which means I would need one of you to volunteer to come over here and bring me and Frida wherever we want to go in your car. And I've noticed how slow quite a few of you are at doing that. But anyway, that's the Library of Lost for today. We're going to do this again, I think maybe a couple more times this weekend, and then we'll go back to the books on shelves. So I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.